Hey.
Hey, you guys. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Awesome. I have to say that was super fun last night.
Indeed, it was.
Last night was? What was last night?
My fun, awesome Christmas party.
That's right. Golden's Christmas.
We had at Campus Jack's, and I got to get out on stage and actually sing, which is
yeah, that was
rare.
Exciting. Yeah,
but
got
fun.
out from behind the console.
And Jason got to play with his band, and
I did.
And I got to try my hand at mixing.
Yeah,
actually, the mix was about the best it's ever been in there. But yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, quite the soiree.
Yeah.
So last night during that party, we used something we're going to talk about today, right, Jason?
We sure did. Yes, we did indeed. So today we are talking about monitors once again. Just a little recap. Last week we kind of got into the basics of monitors. We covered what is a monitor and what its function is, as well as a little theory on how to create mixes for your performers. So today in this discussion, we're going to go through the output processing available on TouchMix specifically. We're going to talk a bit about why you may need to use these things and how to use them to get good sounding, stable monitors on your stage, without feedback and excessive volume on stage and things like that. And so there's a pretty hearty suite of processing that is dedicated to every single output on the mixer. And if you tuned in last week, you'll know that on the TouchMix 30 specifically, which is what we're going to be demoing today, you've got 14 outputs available to you aside from your main left and right. So you've got 14 aux outputs. The TouchMix 16 gives you 6 aux outputs, and then the small little TouchMix 8 still gives you 4 outputs. So it doesn't matter what mixer you're using. You've got a healthy amount of outputs, and every single output on all 3 mixers will give you the exact same suite of processing that we're going to talk about today.
Well, that's impressive. That's a good idea.
I thought so, yeah.
So yeah, John was a developer of the TouchMix. That's why he thinks it's a great idea.
One of the help. Well, I helped.
Really, it is a great idea. All those outputs are awesome.
So,
yeah, I mean, just the sheer number of outputs is great. But when we get into the processing, you'll see just how powerful this tool is. Specifically, I mean, in a lot of ways, but today the topic is monitors. So we'll be able to show off and talk about how to apply this stuff to monitors on stage specifically.
Right.
So the recap last week is we figured out you have your input channel, and then we have a number of ways to get that input channel to an aux out. Right,
Absolutely.
You can go from the channel, you can use the fader output. So you have a couple of different ways to get there. So we showed that, which means all right, I have signal in, and now I have signal going to my monitor, and we showed that last week. And the next thing that we start to talk about is getting the sound out of there, which means that we're just turning it up. But that brings into play the thing that I talked about last week, which is inherently what monitors are is a bad idea. You are sticking a microphone in front of a speaker that microphone is actually bust to. So that seems like a bad idea, but yet that's what we do. So in order to make that happen, there's a few things that go on. First of all, you want to have a great monitor.
That helps.
Oddly enough, we know people who make a great monitor.
Yeah, a couple of them.
But there are other great monitors. But at the start of it, you've got to have you want to have a pretty good monitor with a good voicing in it. And then the next thing that happens is I sure hope that my mixing console, the tool that I'm using, has the ability to control the sound that I'm putting in there and the sound that's coming back out. So to that end, what typically you look at on a big time grown up console, on a real monitor desk, you have EQ, and often you have more than one kind of EQ, and you have limiting or you have compression. You could have both, but typically you use one or the other. Limiting and compression are very similar. Limiting is more of a brick wall thing. Compression is a little more musical, but so, and we'll talk about that because so on a TouchMix we gave you, here you go, on every output.
Should we check it out?
Yep, on every output.
Wake it up here. All right, going into my first monitor mix here, we'll go into the output and
you see you have a PEQ, right?
Now, Nick Semino says, ring in the season, ring out the monitors.
I like it.
Awesome.
That one.
And hello to Paul from the 443 Club in
hey Paul.
Nice.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
Syracuse,
New York. He's actually on the road tonight.
Right.
Good luck on the road, Paul.
So, so anyway, the first thing we're talking about here is we got a parametric EQ. We have a 6-band parametric EQ with a high and a high pass filter or a low pass filter, or a high shelf and a low shelf, depending on what you want to call it. So you have a pretty extensive 6-band parametric here, which is really great. But yet you also have a graphic EQ, the GEQ. And on the graphic EQ, you've got 27 bands, right?
Yeah.
So it's essentially a 1/3 octave.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people who would rather use a graphic EQ than a parametric EQ. And there's the reason for that can be a number of things, but the simplest reason is because it's a fixed frequency and I can just go to the one I want and I can either push it or pull it and do it that way. And it becomes visual after I use it, right? So it's a graphic EQ.
Absolutely.
So we have the graphic EQ, and then we have something else next that we call anti-feedback, and we're going to get deep.
We're going to come back to that,
but we won't get crazy on that yet. But what we will show you is next. Then you have limiter, right?
Yeah.
So there's a button on the limiter screen here, and I believe it's got a switch that says compressor and limiter. So one says comp and limiter, and there are a couple of reasons for that.
Fat hand got in the way.
There's a couple of reasons for that. There are some cases that you would want a limiter on the output of your monitor send. Often it is if someone is using in-ear monitors, right? You want to put a limiter on there so that it can't go over a certain point, right? So you want to kind of brick wall it.
I did that for myself last night with my in-ears.
There you go. And
just in case somebody drops a mic or something awful happens, that limiter will catch it for me.
So sometimes you want to do that. The other times you might want to put it on a wedge. But the compressor switch is there because there are times that you might want to be more creative with your limiting, right? So I have ears. It's a controlled environment. I want to use compression on my ears because I want the mix to sound a certain way, and a compressor can do wonders for that. So we gave you both options on this. So just in itself, you end up with that. This is the processing that's on the output. We can talk about, if we go to the setup tab on here, this is the output of an aux. You've got a couple things. You have the delay that's in this that allows us to do a delay, right? So we can time align things. We also have above the delay, you see a bunch of buttons.
Oh man, I did it again.
You can't do that with your left. So
use my other hand.
And we show you where you might want to set the gain if you have a QSC product. So we help you with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
See, there's the case series, and it tells you, and that matches the output of your mixer to that product. And it helps you to make sure that what we have is gain staging is all correct.
It's so nice that all that information is right in the mixer. You don't have to go to the manual. It's right there.
Nice tool.
And the manual, by the way, is also right there on the mixer. Can't beat it.
Talking about it.
And by the way, if you lose the manual, you don't need it. Because
you don't need it
on the mixer.
It's right here. There's a button under me called info. And you can see that.
That is the manual and anything you ever wanted to know.
The entire user manual right here.
Yeah.
So back to our outputs here. So we showed you that we have two different EQs and a limiter compressor. So let's go back to the thing we skipped over here.
Aha.
We
The main
have
event.
we have a feedback wizard, right? So this
Yes.
is anti-feedback, and we
Absolutely.
can call it a wizard. We can call it feedback suppression. There's a lot of things that people call this, and this is actually for us, it's a wizard. It's an automatic feedback control system, which
Yes.
most people like me would go, "You're kidding." Not using that, don't care.
Nope.
And to be honest, I felt the same way about that originally before we put it in. I was researching new things to put into the TouchMix 30 when we were developing it. I realized that there was a lot of people out in the market that were using feedback suppression, and I thought, well, okay, I may not agree, but if it's really something everybody wants, let's build the best one we can, and let's build one that somebody like me can use.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
what we did was we sat down and said, all right, Mr. Front of House guy, let's go through what your process is when you ring out, which means get rid of the feedback on a monitor or main or whatever. So
yeah, it's a process of
well, this is what I'm
stabilizing.
going to do. I'm going to get my signal in, right? And then we are going to turn things up until it starts to ring. So I fade the fader up a little bit and it starts to ring. And I say, oh, it's 3.15. And I pull 3.15 down. And then I push the fader back up and something starts to ring. I pull the fader down. I pull that frequency out so that as we're going through ringing out the monitors or whatever it is, you don't just have things ringing all the time. You push the fader up and bring it down.
So we have a question from Sean, and he asks, does this apply to the TM30 only or to the TM16 as well? And the answer is it's on both mixers.
It's on all three mixers.
All three mixers, the 8, 16, and the 30.
Yes, absolutely.
The 30 has more bands on this.
Yeah.
Yes, there are more filters.
There are more the notch filters, which we'll talk about in a moment. But that's the only difference. It's
right.
just the number of filters.
Yeah.
So I think the little guys have 6 frequencies, and you've got 12 on this one.
Yeah.
So Sean, I think you'll enjoy this little presentation we're about to do. We're actually going to create some feedback, and we're going to watch the feedback wizard do its magic and notch out.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what these particular filters are and why they are?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So here's the thing. If we're going to make one that does something, my first thought was I've got to be able to put filters in here that aren't super destructive. So how much of the sound each one of these filters takes out, which is the bandwidth, the Q, is very tight on this. And you have a little control at the bottom that allows you to change the width of that, but it's defaulted at where we think the best thing is, so that if you pull 5 or 6 frequencies out of something, it really won't impact the sound of the system that much. Whereas if you did that with a 31 band graphic or a 27 band graphic,
you're going to hear that.
The amount of sound each frequency takes out is much wider. So we made this very tight Q, right? That's what we call it, a very tight Q. So that's a very special filter to do that, right?
Yes.
And then also at the bottom there is a filter depth button, and we're going to talk about that after we
would demo it. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and get going with that. But just to kind of set it up a little bit, so then like you said, John, you know, the filters are very tight bend, so that they're only kind of cutting out and carving out the specific frequencies that are creating the feedback. Another thing I want to mention is this system is independent of the other EQs on the output. So you have the 2 EQs plus this anti-feedback system with additional filters for notching out the feedback. So which means
you can either do great work or ruin it.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to set my demo up here. I do have my K.2, my 8.2 right here. And I've got a microphone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just aim this thing right at that speaker, which I highly advise you to never do in real life. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and just shove this in the grill here.
Wait, hang on. So what we're doing here, though, is we are hyper accentuating what really happens with a microphone in front of your wedge on the floor.
In front of a wedge.
And in order to make the feedback wizard work, you want to get all your microphones or the microphone that you're working. You want to gain it all the way up, or as up close as you can to where it starts to feed back, right? So if you got 4 microphones going through a wedge, right, then you want to open up all those mics, put them at essentially the level that you think they're going to be at, and then start fading the master fader of that mix up.
Yes.
And then once it starts to feed back, you say, all right, let's stop. Let's see if somebody more clever than us can do this, and then we can turn the wizard on.
So this is a great question from Jake, and he's asking, do you use the feedback wizard before or after the sound check?
That's brilliant. It is. We do this before, right?
Yep.
And I don't want to, Jason, I want to show this real quick, but the conversation about flow,
that's part of the conversation that we're going to have about this. So let's go ahead and just take a look at it real quick. As you can see, I do have my microphone gained up and kind of preset. I've preset everything so that I kind of know that it's going to take off pretty easily. My input's just at Unity here, and the channel is completely flat. There's no EQ or compression, anything. It's just an open channel. And I've set my output here to just to the point right before it's going to take off. So we're going to go back into our wizard here, and we're going to show you the automatic mode first. There is a manual mode, which we'll show you too, which is pretty awesome. But I'm just going to go ahead and go into the feedback wizard. And I'm going to add a little bit of noise.
So we put noise in there because it can help excite the room, because the wizard is looking for feedback. And so sometimes the noise helps excite the room.
That's absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and just start this here. And what's going to happen is you're going to notice that this output fader is just going to start creeping up on its own until the system feeds back, and it's going to automatically eliminate that feedback for us. So let's go ahead and get my mic placed there, and we're going to start this. So take a look at this fader here. There we go.
Well, I could actually hear that on my speaker.
Yeah. It's got a bit going on. So you can see it's doing its thing.
And it's hunting, right? You can see that it's hunting.
I can see the arrow hunting.
The little hunter arrow. Ooh, there we go. Got rid of that one. I'm happy about that. All right, so we've got a few going on. I'm going to go ahead and exit it. So once you've got a few filters engaged, you can see it was constantly kind of hunting and trying to wring itself out. And in the state that I have it in, it was never really going to find true stability. But it's working nonetheless. But you can see as well, once I finished it, returned to my fader to my original starting position. And at this point, with all of these filters engaged, I've got, depending on where I choose to stop it, I've got anywhere from 6 to maybe even 10 dB of headroom above my original starting point that is going to continue to be stable, which is sort of the idea that you want to aim for here.
So you just got to do
a reason to do this before the monitor sound check.
That's right. So you just got to do what a guy that's been mixing monitors for a long time, that knows frequencies out of the top of it. You just did all of that automatically and within a minute or two of something.
In less than a minute. And that just was all real time, no smoke and mirrors here. It's as easy as that.
And you didn't need a ton of experience to do it.
So
do you want me to show the manual mode real quick at this point?
I do, but before we do that, I'm going to do this real quick. So at the bottom, so let's say you're in real situation and you've turned this up and you've let the wizard run and you use these filters and you go back to your spot and you say, wow, I've got 10 dB more headroom, but you know what? I feel like it took a little more high end out of it, or I feel like it's carved out a little bit more than I want.
Yeah.
So without wanting to go back in and say, oh, well, which one do I want to bring back? You can go down to the filter depth button and you can leave it's the exact curves that the machine has done for you. And you can relax that or you can increase that, right? So you can make it deeper or shallower. So that if you didn't need 10 dB of headroom, but those were still the offending frequencies, you could just relax that a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a very cool feature. Okay. Yeah. So beyond that, the thing about most feedback suppression is you certainly can't use it while the band is playing, because how would it know the difference between guitar feedback that's supposed to be there and feedback, right?
Absolutely.
So we said, yeah, but this is still a valuable tool. And what if somebody's out at a gig and there's a guy running in front of house and he's doing a corporate gig, and there's a guy with a head mic on, and it's feeding back, and he's not sure. And by the way, he's in situation, so he can't go hunting, right?
Right.
So wouldn't it be great if we could turn this on manual mode and it would hunt for you, and then you could just tell it what to get rid of.
Tell it when to engage. So as you can see on my screen here, this little guy is still hunting. It's still kind of actively trying to chase down things. So
and in that no lock screen above you, right? That'll tell you frequencies.
So I'm gonna do this again. Point my speaker. We'll see exactly how much headroom I got here. So my starting point was negative 21 dB. I'm gonna creep it up. Negative 15. All right, so it's going. I got some low frequency feedback there. Here we go. Oop, that's a good one. There we go. Ooh.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Boom.
So
just like that.
So imagine in a gig that's happening and you don't have to hunt. You can just hit that button. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's very, very handy. It's very useful. You know, if you're in that scenario where your things are feeding back, that's your, as a sound man, that's your nightmare. You know, during the middle of the event, and to be able to just come into this tool and quickly press a single button and you're safe.
And then the last real cool feature on this that we did. So you see, we have all the knobs, we have gain, and we have the frequency there. And you say, well, what's that all about? So those tell us which filter is which frequency. But from the standpoint of a professional being able to use this, if say a professional goes up and he rings his mains out with this, right? Mm-hmm. And because he's in a hurry and I don't have time to do anything and I can just ring it out.
Yep.
So as a front of house guy or a systems engineer, he may say, all right, I like everything that this did for me, but you know what? I know that the 2.5 doesn't have to come down that far because I'm not going to push it. Or I know that this frequency I want to take out or I don't want to take out. You now have, not only do you have all this automatic stuff, but you have the ability to change the frequencies and change the gain. So you can contour not only the depth of it, but you can contour the individual filters of it, right? So, and you can, by the way, the little blue line up there, you can bypass the filter and say, is that the one that I want to put back in? And if you take that out and it starts to feed back, you say, no, that's not the one I want.
Yeah, no, I want that one. That one was good.
Right.
So that is the feedback wizard on a TouchMix, and we feel like it's probably without rival.
Yeah, no, it is. It is extremely useful. It's very effective. It's two things. It's very easy to use. Like you said, anybody could use this. The pro can definitely use this to save time, and then maybe go in and adjust some things if he feels it's necessary. But a complete novice could also walk up to this thing and kind of activate it when necessary and get some good results out of it.
And that's the key, Jason. Like everything that we put into this mixer, and I say this every time you guys let me come hang out, but this is like 4 or 5 times. I'm pretty sure you're going to tell me you're done with me soon. But everything that we do is about results, and it's results for a novice and results for a professional. So I made this so a professional who might say I'm not using it, if he did take the time to use it, he'd go, oh, all right, well, guess what? The manual mode works for me, or a part of the automatic mode works if I'm in a hurry. So we tried to make this really smart. Now, when it comes back to really smart, if we want to go back to the PEQ button, and we say, all right, well, here's parametric EQ, and this is really cool, you guys, and that's all nice, well, and good. But if you go to that top row up there, you're going to see something that's going to tell you that you have RTA.
That is correct.
On TouchMix, on every output and on every EQ, we also give you a real-time analyzer, right?
Right.
So it's not just I'm spinning knobs, but I'm spinning knobs and I can see what it's doing.
You can see it.
So we have
visual aid.
We have a whole real-time analyzer circuit in this mixer that is something a little bit different that you can take an iPad and default it to to the talkback mic and put a measurement mic, and it becomes a measurement RTA instead of this is internal RTA. But the important thing is that a guy doing monitors would really find it helpful whether to use the RTA, and the GEQ has one right above it. If you look at the GEQ, there's an RTA right there. If you just activate it becomes, there you go. So now you see all that. So besides feedback, besides all of the tools, we gave you stuff that's even smarter to know how to operate them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
very cool.
Monitor output 101.
Turn my mic off here. There we go. All right. That is
we could talk about a lot more, but
I know there's a lot more to the conversation. We might need to do a third chapter of this.
I know, because there's now that we have this, the next thing is the people want to know how to put effects in their monitors, right?
Yep. That'll be the carrot.
The upside of this is if you own a TouchMix and you use these tools that we've given you, you will have a better chance to use effects in your monitors because the monitor will be stable.
Right.
Than if then chances are like you just roll into a club and somebody's got it kind of wrung out, or it's completely over wrung out, right? And you can't hear effects. So as much as I always shudder when guys want to put reverb in their monitor, at least if you do use these tools, you can get a good solid monitor base.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
I think we're going to have to go through a third chapter.
I think so. I think, we'll talk about, we'll do a little postscript to this. We'll talk about the actual process of getting the effects into our monitors here. And we can also talk about a little bit more about why it's not always the best idea to do so in the first place.
Right.
But if you do need to do it and you do it right, you can get it done pretty quickly and easily here.
That's true, and I know that I'm very biased in a negative way about that, and that's my fault. But so anybody out there that owns this, that's actually Golden as a musician, as a musician, like that's super valuable. You want to be able to put effects in your monitors, which is why we made it easy on this. So
absolutely.
So the TouchMix is small but mighty, and is applicable for even the largest of applications. And we have an Instagram of Dead Sarah playing and their monitor board. Brad, go ahead and bring that up. Let's see that one.
That's a real gig. Oh yeah.
Look at that.
An insane amount of line arrays.
So they carry that with them because it's small, compact, and powerful, and they do all their ear mixes and stuff off of it. And
the nice thing is their ears are already in place in that scene, and they don't have to spend a ton of time doing monitors.
And you don't like that. The TouchMix 30 fits in the overhead of an airplane, which is a true statement. And
I keep it in my car.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people since we started with that use TouchMix 30 as their monitor desk in real situation. I mean, real pro guys using it because it's only that big, but it has all these tools.
Right. Absolutely.
Pretty powerful.
Super powerful compact mixer.
A couple, I think maybe not questions. We've got a request for doing an entire session on just using an RTA.
Sure.
Awesome.
Do a whole topic on that. Maybe we'll
once we finish our monitor series.
In the future, we'll get through everything we need to say on monitors here, maybe in another session. And we can definitely get something like that going.
Yeah, considering you get all this RTA in a TouchMix,
right?
You might as well go through it and say, "Hey, this is how you can avail yourself of it."
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well,
go ahead.
I think we're about to do the same thing. Are we going to take us out?
Yeah. So,
right, go ahead.
Before we let you go, I just wanted to quickly let you know about a couple of Facebook groups that we have. We have the QSC TouchMix group. If you own a TouchMix or are interested in owning a TouchMix, or even if you don't own one but find yourself mixing on one, this is an informative group about everything TouchMix. The other Facebook group we have is hosted by QSC and myself. It's called Church Sound Training. This group was actually created for church sound people and their volunteers, but the audio concepts that are taught here are universal and applicable across the board. because adding to your audio knowledge and understanding helps you to operate your TouchMix and all your audio equipment with better skill and precision. Also wanted to remind you about our new House of Worship audio training course that we have going. This is a modular online training course where you learn the basics of audio engineering for our houses of worship. And this course covers everything from properly rolling up a cable to setting up your PA system from scratch, to building monitor mixes, running sound for your service. It's an AVIXA accredited course, so if you're looking for continuing credits,
that's right.
Yeah, it's a great course to get some extra credit.
Units.
Yep. And all righty. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a fun session. I'm Golden Preciado, along with Jason Fernandez and John Graves. And from all of us here at QSC, strive for excellence, never stop learning, and be the best that you can be. And we'll see you on the next QSC Tech Talk.
All right.
Bye for now.